So I've been playing Blueprints, right? And I recently beat it. And while playing it, I learned two things. One, I learned how to introduce people who aren't super familiar with games, to games who like into gaming, basically, because they just don't realize that games like Blueprints or these sort of puzzle games exist, right? And you know what? Fuck it. We'll just do the rant. I've been trying to get my mom into games for a long time, right? Since she got sober. Uh, like 4 or 5 years now. Maybe 3, 4, whatever. But it just hasn't worked because she didn't, she can't really play COD. The reaction's not fast enough. Fighting games is a lot to learn. But recently, I was like, oh, let's try puzzle games. Let's try it in this way, right? And it opened up the world of gaming to you, or to her, because she just didn't, like I said, she just didn't know these things fucking existed. She didn't know that, games weren't just like the action, constant moving. She didn't know that there was ones where you had to be a detective or, uncover the mysteries of the house, or even something like Unpacked, where it's, very simple and just trying to like clear out rooms and make them look nice. She just didn't know these were there, and now that she does, she's like finding a lot of love. And I think that with people who are more like, they don't play video games. They don't necessarily gravitate towards that like action, or they can't, use their hands super fast or whatever, whatever the issue may be. It's not really a problem because they have time to understand what buttons do or to like think things through because it's not like constant motion. But that's not the main reason I wanted to make this video, right? I was just a little tangent. The reason I wanted to make it is I think the Ludo narrative consonance. Oh, I said the buzzword in Blueprints it's a masterclass in like in game writing and in game design. I think that there aren't very many games that have the gameplay and the narrative as like entwined, and I think it's just something absolutely fucking gorgeous. And it's exploring something that you can't really have in a different media or in a different medium. Like you can't make a Blueprints movie because the sense of discovery is not going to be there. But I think to really get into how the cohesion works and how lunar consonance is so like highlighted. Uh, I think I need to like break down the gameplay and the story of the game so you can understand when I'm talking about like specific parts of like the gameplay and how it relates to the story. You get what I'm talking about, right? Now, I do want to give a warning that I will be incredibly biased in this. I'm going through a rough time for the last couple of months, so having this game that I like able to play with my mom, have that just have that thing to look forward to has been really helpful in like trying to remain positive. So I'm gonna be very biased in like how much I like this game and like singing its praises and such. I just want for clarity to mention that here, so that you don't think it's flawless. It's just I'm glazing the game for lack of a better term. But we'll get into the next section. I obviously want to make this video about how the gameplay interacts with the story, right? But to get to that point, I kind of have to explain gameplay and story separately. So here's the gameplay loop, right? So it is a roguelike puzzle game where you have to draft each room of a mansion to get to a place called the antechamber. And then you find out when you first get to the antechamber that it's not open because, well, I mean, actually, you don't first find out. They tell you in the intro, but I'm a little fucking slow, obviously. So trying to put together what they meant by like nobody else had figured out how to get there. I thought it was just like they hadn't figured out the drafting. Well, no, obviously people figured out the drafting. People have to clean every room of the house. It's just that there's like a mystery to it. So you have to draft the rooms and then solve the puzzles in the different rooms to be able to open the last room, which is called the antechamber, um, to win, right? And how you go about this, like I said, by drafting rooms because and figuring out mysteries and solving puzzles that are inside their rooms. You have, I want to say a 10 square block. I'll put it like right here. and you have to draft rooms. You pick one of the three that show up as choices, and then off of that, you have to get to different points in the house and get to different ways to have a run where you're successfully able to get to the antechamber. Which there are a bunch of different ways to do it. You know what? We're gonna talk about why the gameplay is so cool for a second. It's not super relevant because this is mainly about game design, not necessarily, well, not game design, but like game story things, not necessarily on the gameplay, but I really like the gameplay of Blueprints, so we're going to talk about the gameplay tailors itself to each player so well and really does change each individual experience. Because not only are the rooms you draft, but the permanent additions have parts that have different times that they come in, and you can pick them up in different ways and different orders, so each run can end up being different. And there are even different solutions to actually get into the antechamber, you know, whether you... And I won't spoil the solutions, but it's the variety of ways that you can go about it and how different it is on each like gameplay cycle. And you might say, oh, well, isn't it just what, like, roguelikes are? And to an extent, you're correct, but also you're dumb and stupid. And let me explain why, right? So, like, in something like RoboQuest, you're still gonna experience the events one after the other, after the other, after the other, in, like, the exact same way every time you play it, every time you beat it, right? Now, the boss you have to fight may change, and, you know, what exact... Not even what stage, but, like, you know, what you're fighting may change, but you're always going to be doing it in the same order. Whereas Blueprints, how you beat the game, you can do it in so many different ways, depending on like where you and like have different things set up for different ways you like to build your house, like the fucking circle thing. I can't remember, but you can place it. It's a permanent like 4-door addition or 3-door addition with a 4th secret door to the basement. You get to choose where you place it on one of the tiles. I forget which row it has to be on, but it'll be right here over the Genesis pool. But where you put that can, like, help you to which direction you want to be, like, which direction of the antechamber you want to go towards, what kind of buildings you like. Do you like more turns? Do you like a straight passageway, like a straight shot? And I think it's very, very interesting. And there are so many, like, little things, too, you just don't have to interact with to beat the game, but you definitely can and get cool stuff. Like, there's an entire item crafting system, never once used, never once touched. I touched my viewers that are over 18, no, but there's an item check-in where you can put an item in there one day, and then the next day if you draft the thing again, or the next time you draft it again, you can take it out. I put a battery pack in there because I thought it would be necessary. Never fucking used it. It just sat there for the entire game, so I don't like dead ends. I fucking hate dead ends, but you can build for dead ends too, which is really cool, and adds to the But yeah, it adds to the variety. We're gonna get back on topic for why I have to bring up the gameplay, right? What's the inherent sense of discovery in the game and how the gameplay like lets you feel rewarded, right? Those drafting all these rooms and keeping the information from the different clues, and then you finally find the room that it's used in. It gives this like amazing sense of like discovery. You feel really fucking smart. Like anytime you finally get to a multi-room puzzle, right? Like really drives you to, you know, continue going. And obviously difficulty adds drive to the game, right? But look over why it's special here, right? And it has, but you feel so fucking smart for like using the magnifying glass to look at a code in the library and then using the code in the fucking security room, or you know, you're in the boiler room, you're messing with the pipes, and then and you learn the combination through a laboratory or something, right? It makes you feel intelligent, and it gives the ending such a large reward because you have to solve all these puzzles. You know, they don't really give hints. There's not a whole lot of clues as to like what this is used for what. It really is on you to figure it out. And even the non-important gameplay notes feel really good to pick up. And you still feel like you have to you have to read them to get the information, which is, but I'll explain more of that in the story thing. Like, I think it's what we're doing right now. So, in order to describe why the Ludo narrative Consonance is so good and the gameplay cohesion is so special, you have to talk about how the story is actually delivered, right? Because if you don't understand it, then you're just gonna be like, "Isn't that how games are?" But let me cook. So, traditionally games are done in a very linear fashion with cutscenes, right? Where this cutscene tells this event, and then you play through events following the cutscene, and then so on and so forth until end of game. How Blueprints presents its lore is through in-game letters and like notes and journal entries and newspaper clippings that are left around the house or kept in binders, right? And these binders and notes and journals and yada 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 are all implemented into the game world. All of them make sense where they are. If you're gonna find a journal, it's gonna be in a bedroom on a bedside of whoever's bed, whoever owned the journal, right? Whoever owned the journal it was their bed. So the journal's gonna be on the thing next to their bed, right? Or notes or like letters, like there's a letter in the guest room that talks about the billiards puzzle, and it's a letter written from the guest who was staying to Grandpa, right? He stayed in that guest room when he was there, so that's why they're all implemented really well. They also give you more motivations to look at them than just lore, right? They give you more incentives than just lore. They incentivize it through gameplay by, having clues also be pieces of lore that are in the places that you would expect to look similar as the notes. You never know what note could contain a clue, what couldn't, so it's important to retain the information and keep track of what was important from different notes, because it may be important for a different puzzle, right? And answers to puzzles are often, like I said, baked into lore. For example, to get to the apple orchard, right? These are all spoilers. I should have said that. To get to the apple orchard, I guess puzzle spoilers. They're not spoilers for the game. For the story themselves, it's just but it is a spoiler to a puzzle, which is also great. But, to get into the apple orchard, you have to enter the gate code. To find the gate code, you have to go into the dark room and then turn on the power to look at all the different pictures of the family and the staff who was working there. And if you're using a magnifying glass and you look at the one of the daughter at the apple orchard, you can actually see the lock and see what the digits were on the unlocked gate. But you're also understanding the enjoyment of pictures and the documentation of them, the importance of pictures in the family, and then being scattered throughout the house and being a reminder of the main character's mother who had passed to the grandfather. I think that, having the lore baked into the clues and making you wonder, what's lore, what's a clue, making you want to read everything, is a really good motivation for the more gameplay-minded player to learn about the story and to pay attention to these things, which I think also makes it more digestible to maybe some people who typically play more action-oriented games. Well, I was about to say linear, but I never brought up the linear part. What I mean by the linear is that the order in which you can find the notes is not set in stone because of the gameplay, like we talked about, is you're drafting rooms. In what order you get the rooms and find these notes is not going to be set in stone. Each individual person is having to put this mystery together with whatever clues they're getting and whatever. And I would say an example, but that's literally every clue and every piece of lore that's in the game. So your pick. Now we get to talk about why I made the whole video. The big buzzword that I have in the title: Ludo narrative. So we finally get to the point or well, I guess the reason that I wanted to make this video, um, and it is the ludonarrative consonance of the game. And I'm sure you're gonna gotta pick it up what it is through context clues if you didn't already know what ludonarrative consonance was. But as Oxford definition describes it, it's a fucking thing where the gameplay, your actions and gameplay match the fucking actions of the character in the story. And I probably went a little bit too much into it in the story part, but that's fine because we'll use that just as like, sort of the intro to this, right? Where I talked about how the emotions of the player and the emotions of the main character are similar, right? And they do that so intentionally, and obviously it's intentional. They developed the game to do that, but like every single moment of like story lore gives you the sense of discovery that the main character would be feeling there about like not knowing the majority of his family's past, not knowing how to get in here. So he would be having the same feelings as you while you're looking through these clues, while you're figuring out how the home is working and getting better at, like placing the rooms and learning what notes are important to read, what aren't. That's exactly what was happening for that main character at that time. We had to do it relatively quickly. We don't actually have the date that he gave, and it's possible he didn't have it. He just did that to add like a sense of tension, to make the ending for him hit harder. Because I think I mentioned it in the other one. I don't know. It's been a while since I recorded. Not a while. It's like 4 days since I recorded the story section. But how the story ends is you read your grandfather's last note, and he talks about how when inherited he inherited it by birthright, so he never really had to do anything extra or like really work for his position, and that like made him stagnant in his later life, and he would make choices to like preserve image over doing what he wants to do and doing his own adventures, and he doesn't want that for his grandson. So the whole thing was to give a reward and teach the grandson a lesson about, oh my lord, it's such a fucking basic word, persistence, and the benefit of persistence, which also works for the player in teaching the way of persistence in that, but also having something outside that you can relate at the exact same time, right? Because yes, it does meet your emotions in just the game, and like the payoff for the perseverance and learning all this and continuing to learn about it, but then it also lets you combine that with the emotions of like persistence for your own goals, and like that will pay off. And that's the motivation of him getting the manor and him wanting his grandson, or him passing the manor down and him wanting his grandson to solve the mystery. So it all crescendos in this one like big meeting of not only how the player would feel from just playing the game, how the character would feel just in a story, but also how the player probably feels outside of the game, and it like links these things together to make the story feel like really special and really naturally put into the story. And like it's not just the ending, and it's not something it builds up to. Obviously it escalates as any story would, but you get that sense of cohesion from like literally minute one. The first time you read that note, you are immediately linked like to the character's understanding, right? Of this place. You just understand it was your grandfather who you didn't see a whole lot. But sure that you did, but like you don't remember it because you have mental trauma and shit. But you and the main character have a very similar amount of knowledge going into it, right? He knows who his dad and his mom is, like in personal name, but he definitely doesn't know who his mom, was, considering how young she was, when he died. So despite him having background information of like names and certain personalities, it doesn't, the parts that you learn about in the story, he also wouldn't learn. Like, the background information you get from it is something that both you and the player and the character are learning about at the same time. And if you're getting into the game with, like, obviously not the exact same level of interest, because he's finding out about his fucking mom who died, and we're playing a video game, but, as close as you can get to in this sort of, in an artistic medium where you can't kill somebody's family. I don't know medium where you can, but I guess that would be the way to give like real sorrow, and I guess probably like D&D might be the closest to real griefing, because it's like a character that you make, and like the story is entirely molded by you. But you can't say that about any game that is like a very player-driven choice, choice-driven narrative. So don't really listen to that. But they use different aspects to put the character's mood into the player's mind, right? Like they use the genie to convey the character's like doubts and sort of imprint that on the player.
I see a boy standing on a shore of white sand. He is looking for something he was told he would not find.
Is this not worth it? Like, what the character would be going through with like the self-doubt, and having a way to give that in-game without having to give away the character being silent, allowing for you to get more immersed in or like the few cutscenes with like the hesitancy and the fear in the character's actions. He doesn't need to talk, but it's completely like understandable, like worry and confusion that the player is most likely sharing in like some form, whether that amount is like the amount is significantly less in because we're not in the situation, which I keep saying, and I feel like I'm getting repetitive, but it is really important to mention, because then they're gonna be cool. Where it's like, well, it's not a one-to-one feeling. It's like, yeah, obviously you're playing a fucking video game. You're not experiencing this in real life. As far as matching the emotions of while you're playing the game with the character, it does that phenomenally and in such a natural way that is very difficult for most characters to do. Most games will have a monologue or say how they're feeling out loud, very talkative. Even in like silent games, it'll be notes from them, or they don't have like a personality or thoughts, right? So it's interesting to at least see some thoughts of the character through the information, even if he's not the most in-depth person, It's enough thoughts in a natural way to get you more immersed. And I feel like if I say immersed again, I'm gonna shoot myself. And I think one of the best things they did in there to get the player immersed is having them use like an out-of-game journal to keep information, right? Like you have to document the information and then like go through your notes, so it gives you a bigger feeling of like you're the detective, you're solving the mysteries, than like just going through logs of all the information that's already there. It's adding a physical element to the game that also allows you to maybe not get into the thoughts of the character or be exactly like the character, but get into like the feeling of what he's doing, getting in like the same motions, And maybe this is just me imprinting. I'm not sure if this is fully intentional, right? But I feel like even how they hint you towards some characters or towards some mysteries is like, or how obviously, because that's what the character had to do it, but how the character would feel about the mysteries and getting the clues, I think it's how they intend him to feel. But like I said, that might just be me like projecting it. But like if we take the morgue, the morgue secret, right, where you see throughout the house all these hats that are laying all over the place, and then when you go to the chapel, you see these different stained glass windows. In each of the stained glass windows, they have the hats, and then when you go down to the morgue, you see the statues with the hats. Well, they all have numbers on the bottom of the stained glass, and you have to move the statues in the order of those numbers, which you can tell based on the hats, like cooking hat 1, farmer hat 2, so on and so forth. And at least for me personally, I found that mystery towards like the end of the game, like when I was like within my last 5 days. And having that like eureka moment of that's what that's for feels like how the character would feel. Like it feels like that level of celebration. Or even if you don't get it that day, just making that one big discovery off this one thing that you knew was there the whole time. It's fucking amazing. And then also in like the story thing, finding out how like who like the actual characters behind all the hats and like the backstory and why they're all like labeled that is so cool, and I love all the notes, and I think all the characters are really well written. It's great. It's great. The gameplay and the story really they enhance each other in such a unique way, and I really highly recommend you all play it. I think this is kind of the end of my main point. Uh, uh but I think it pretty good selling. But yeah, for all you have anything else to say, because we're in the outro. I just think this is a great way to show people ludonarrative, uh, consonance. I almost said cohesion, as well as introduce people who are into games. I'm gonna bring that back up at the end because I think it's so fucking cool that there's like a way to do that. I love media that can only be in one medium, right? For books like House of Leaves, games like blueprints, movies. It's kind of hard to think of one for a movie. I like sat here for a couple minutes, was trying to think, and everything I could, it was like, well, that could also be done in a book. So I guess I'll go with one that I haven't seen, but I think fills the criteria. Bo is afraid. If I'm wrong, then include me in the comments. But it sounds like that's a thing that can only be told in movies. But I don't really know. But all the drama shit that you can do in movies, you can also do like in books. You know what I mean? Like I was gonna say like The Lighthouse, but like you could absolutely make a book about The Lighthouse. Or like Mickey 17, you could absolutely do a book about Mickey 17. So it's a little bit harder to find it with movies, but I still like them. I like all art. But I really like it when art can only be done in like one format. And I think for video games, Blueprints is a really easy one to point at and be like, this can only be done in a video game. There are obviously a bunch of other games that are like maybe not either deeper or more complex that it's harder to like show people because you have to break down a lot more. But I mean, you're actually able to get a good glimpse at blueprints just by like giving it a glance. So it's been real. It's been fun. Fuck you.